don't think we noticed when it happened, but somewhere along the way, things stopped feeling the same. Not worse, just different. There was a time when everything felt slower, not in a bad way, just simpler. You didn't feel like you were behind. You didn't feel like you had to rush everything. You were just there. And I think that's what I miss the most. That feeling of doing something without needing it to mean anything. No pressure, no expectations, just being in the moment. It reminds me of how things used to feel, even in something as simple as Minecraft. There wasn't always a goal, no perfect plan. Sometimes you'd just walk, no destination, no reason. And somehow that was enough. Now everything feels different. Like every second has to count. If you're not improving, if you're not building something, if you're not moving forward, then you're falling behind. At least that's what it feels like. But I don't think it was always like that. There was a time when doing something simple was enough. You didn't need a reason. You didn't need an outcome. You just did it because you wanted to. And somehow, that made it more meaningful. Even in Minecraft, the smallest things used to feel big. Surviving your first night. Building something small, even if it wasn't perfect. It didn't matter how fast you got there. It just mattered that you were there. And I think that's what's missing now. We're always thinking about what's next. Even when something good is happening, part of your mind is already moving on. What's the next step? What should I be doing after this? It's like we forgot how to just stay, to sit in a moment without trying to turn it into something else. And I get it. There's pressure to be better, to do more, to not waste time. But I think in trying to gain all of that, we lost something without realizing it. We lost the ability to enjoy things while they're happening. And it's not gone forever. It's still there. You just have to slow down enough to notice it again. That's the hard part. Slowing down feels wrong now. It feels like you're falling behind, like you should be doing more. But maybe that's exactly why it matters. Because not everything needs to lead somewhere. Some things are just meant to be experienced. Not everything needs progress. Not everything needs a result. Sometimes, just being there is enough. I think that's why moments like this feel different. Because for a second, you're not thinking about everything else. You're not worried about what's next. You're just here. And that feeling, even if it's small, even if it doesn't last long, it's real. And I think we need more of that. Not more noise, not more speed. Just more moments where nothing is expected from you. Where you can just exist without feeling like you're wasting time. Because you're not. You're just living. And maybe that's something we forgot how to do. But it's not gone. You can still come back to it. Even if it's just for a little while. Even if it's just moments like this. I think that's enough. I really do. I think one of the strangest things about growing up is that no one really tells you when it's happening. There's no clear moment, no switch. You don't wake up one day and feel completely different. It's gradual, quiet. It happens in the background while you're busy doing other things. And then one day, you look back and realize you're not the same person you used to be. Not in a bad way. Just different. The things that used to excite you don't always hit the same anymore. The things you used to care about don't feel as important, and new things take their place. Responsibilities, thoughts, a different way of seeing everything. I think that's the part people don't really talk about. Growing up isn't just gaining more, it's also letting go of certain feelings, certain versions of yourself. That version of you that could enjoy something without thinking too much about it. That could be fully in the moment, without worrying about what comes next. But at the same time, you gain awareness. You start understanding things more deeply. You notice things you didn't notice before. And sometimes, that makes everything feel a little heavier. Even simple moments. They don't always feel as simple as they used to. And I think that's why moments like this matter. Because for a second, you don't feel all of that. You're not thinking about everything at once. You're not trying to figure everything out. You're just there. And maybe growing up isn't about losing that feeling forever. Maybe it's just about learning how to come back to it. Even if it's only for a little while. Even if it's not as easy as it used to be. It's still there. You just have to slow down enough to notice it again. It's so easy to feel like you're behind. Like everyone else is moving faster than you, doing more than you, figuring things out before you. And even if you try not to think about it, it still finds a way in. You see what other people are doing, what they've built, what they've accomplished, and you start questioning yourself. Why am I not there yet? Why does it feel like I'm so far behind? And the worst part is, it doesn't even feel like you chose to compare. It just happens. But what you don't see is everything behind those moments. The time, the mistakes, the uncertainty. You're comparing your full reality to someone else's highlights. And that's never going to feel fair. Because your life isn't meant to follow someone else's timeline. There isn't a set pace you're supposed to move at, even if it feels like there is. And I think that pressure is what makes everything feel heavier than it needs to be. Because instead of just experiencing something, you start measuring it. You start asking yourself if it's enough, if you're doing enough, if you are enough. And that question never really has an answer that feels satisfying, because the goal keeps moving. There's always something more, something better. But maybe the point was never to keep up. Maybe it was never a race. Maybe it was just about experiencing things in your own time, without constantly looking to the side, without turning every moment into a comparison. Because the moment you stop comparing, even for a second, things start to feel lighter, more real, more yours.
I think we spend too much time in our own heads, thinking about things that haven't happened yet, replaying things that already did, trying to predict outcomes, trying to control situations, trying to make sense of everything before we even experience it. And it's exhausting, because your mind doesn't really turn off. It just keeps going. One thought turns into another. What if this goes wrong? What if I mess this up? What if this doesn't work out? And before you even realize it, you're not in the moment anymore. You're somewhere else. Somewhere that hasn't even happened. And most of the time, the things we overthink don't even matter as much as we think they do. They just feel big in the moment, because we give them that power. But when you step back, when you actually experience things as they are, they're usually simpler than you expected. Not perfect, but manageable. And I think that's why quiet moments feel so different. Because for once, your mind slows down. You're not trying to solve anything. You're not trying to control everything. You're just present. And that feeling is rare, but it shouldn't be. Because not everything needs to be figured out ahead of time. Not everything needs to be analyzed. Some things are better when you just let them happen. When you just experience them as they are, without trying to shape them into something else. And maybe that's what we need more of. Less thinking, more experiencing. Everything feels fast now, like there's always something waiting for you to do next. Something you should be working on, something you should be improving. It's hard to just stop. Even when you have the time, it doesn't always feel right to use it doing nothing. It feels like you're wasting it, like you should be doing more. But I don't think slowing down is a waste. I think it's something we've forgotten how to do. Because when everything moves too fast, you don't really experience it. You just move through it, from one thing to the next, always thinking about what's coming after. And then, eventually, you look back, and it all feels like it passed too quickly. Not because time actually sped up, but because you weren't really there for most of it. You were always focused on the next step, the next goal, the next thing. And I get it. There's pressure to keep moving, to not fall behind, to make something of your time. But maybe not every moment needs to be used like that. Maybe some moments are just meant to be lived fully, without turning them into something productive, without needing them to lead somewhere, just experienced for what they are. Because time is going to pass either way. That part is unavoidable. The only difference is whether you actually felt it while it. I think there's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. And most of the time, people mix those two up. Being alone isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes, it's the only time things actually feel quiet. No expectations, no noise. Just you and your own thoughts. And yeah, that can feel uncomfortable at first. Because you're not used to it. You're used to distractions, constant sound, constant movement. So when everything slows down, it almost feels wrong. But after a while, it starts to feel different. Not empty, just calm. Like you can finally think clearly. Like you're not being pulled in 10 different directions at once. And I think that's something a lot of people avoid. Not because they want to, but because they don't know how to sit with it. With themselves. Without needing something else to fill the space. But some of the clearest moments happen when it's just you. No pressure to act a certain way. No need to respond to anything. Just existing. Even something simple, like being in a quiet world by yourself. It doesn't feel lonely. It feels peaceful. Because there's a difference. Lonely feels empty, like something is missing. But being alone, that can feel full. Full of thoughts, full of space, full of moments you actually notice. And I think we need more of that. More time where it's okay to not be surrounded by everything all the time. To not be constantly connected. Because when you're always connected, you don't really get time with yourself. And that matters more than people realize. Because at the end of the day, you're always going to have yourself. So learning how to be okay with that, not just okay, but comfortable, that changes everything. It turns something that used to feel empty into something that actually feels peaceful. And maybe that's the difference. Maybe it was never about being alone. Maybe it was just about how you see it.